Halden Salway Lama Rinpoche, Daki Chiwar Pede Denjula, Kadrin Shabogone Dejunse, Kusun Tuki Nodrup Saldu Sol. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
And I was thinking, in between interviews, had a few thoughts. And one was that this is a great place to do a program on emotional healing, since this is a healing center. And I don't know, that might actually increase just the karma from this wonderful place. Another thing that came to mind is that when we're talking about emotional healing, a lot of people want to have stable emotions. And the question is, of course, is that really an oxymoron? Is there such a thing as emotional stability? I'll let you answer that question. There's some new people here today, which I'm pleased to see. And of course, they're coming into kind of the middle of things. So they're just going to have to catch up.
That's compassion.
I did say to one person that we're making a recording of this, and it might be possible to get a hold of a recording at some point. Today, what I wanted to talk about first was forgiveness. I've spent a lot of time on how we tend to blame ourselves or blame other people. And the only place that I've run into blame being positive in Buddhism is in the 7 points of mind training, where there is a slogan that goes, drive all blame into one. And that's blame your ego. But you are not your ego. This is an important thing to remember when we're blaming. There's a big difference between saying, I'm always screwing up, I can't do anything right, I'm a piece of yada, yada, yada. And saying, ego, you're always getting me in trouble. You're always causing me a lot of pain. In fact, you're a pain in the butt. That's healthy. But you have to distinguish between who you really are and what ego really is. It's a huge difference. So we're going to go into this a lot today. This afternoon, well, we'll see how far I get this morning. But at some point today, we're going to go into more deeply the idea of Buddha nature and our inherent perfection and purity, too. That will never get you in trouble, by the way.
And Children talks about when she was teaching drive all blame into one. And someone said, who's one? And so you can call your ego one.
Yeah. And that is true. We wear a lot of different hats, roles. We're really actually quite complicated. To diverge a little bit about that comment, when I've done this at KTD, both the forgiveness and the emotional healing from trauma, I've worked with a woman who's a psychotherapist and an art therapist, and she frequently talks about that, how we really have these different personas. And she goes into that in great depth. But I don't do art therapy. So you just got me, and we'll just have to work with that. But what forgiveness is it means change. It means transformation. It means you don't know where you're going also. Change is interesting. Change is letting go rather than, okay, this is who I am, and that is exactly where I want to be and who I want to be. I've talked about growth yesterday, and you don't know as you grow and develop exactly what's going to happen. The seed never sees the flower. You know, it just can't happen. So we talked about space yesterday too. You know, you have to let go, draw a line between yourself and the past, and give yourself room to grow in the future. Seeds are potential. You can't tell the color of a flower from a seed unless all seeds of that plant are exactly the same color. And you know how to identify the seeds too. But amazing, most seeds have a similar appearance to other seeds. Now, seeds have a protective cover, but the cover has to be breached for the seed to grow. I believe I mentioned the cocoon yesterday. Chogyam Trungpa talked about the cocoon that we build around ourselves, and that you could say that the edge of the cocoon, the surface of the cocoon, is that which is inside our territory and outside not my territory. And you know where the surface is because it's fear. When you start being afraid, you've reached the edge of your territory. You've reached the unknown. And of course, inside that seed, it's pretty claustrophobic. It's pretty small. The frog at the bottom of the well that I talked about yesterday. By the way, this again just came into my mind at this point, but this is an important point to bring up. I was attending a retreat, a 6-day retreat that Thich Nhat Hanh was leading, who has written a lot of material on mindfulness, book after book after book. And so he is up there giving his talk in front of 400 people, and he knocks over his cup of tea. And, well, now he could have said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I..." Bad Lama.
Don't beat yourself up too much, you might have to take a nap.
So he knocks his cup. I don't even have to tell about other Lama's mistakes, but he knocks his cup of tea over, and what he did is he just calmly and mindfully cleaned it up. You know, no big deal. Anyway, we need a plant to grow, needs to have the right conditions. You know, it needs water, warmth, fertility. I've talked about manure. That's where the manure comes in. We've got lots of fertility here, lots of nourishment. Needs space to grow. It needs sunlight. And so we've got the manure. What we need to do is add love, loving kindness, and care. And the reason why I thought of Thich Nhat Hanh is because what I have next here is he has a book that quite possibly is out now, and it's called No Mud, No Lotus. The lotus needs the mud to grow. There's another of the slogans of the 7 Points of Mind training, which is always meditate or contemplate on whatever causes resentment. That's a good one to think about. This will help us see where we need to forgive other people, or if we're resenting ourselves, where we need to look more deeply. Any strong emotions could be looked at as a warning light on the dashboard of your car. If something strong is coming up, that can be a clue to I need to kind of take a time out here and investigate what's going on, rather than the usual samsaric approach is let's go into this full throttle, put the gas pedal to the floor. And taking that time out gives you some space, by the way. So I look at forgiveness as having a core word, which is give. And what we give is we're giving love and compassion to whoever we are forgiving, whether it be ourselves or other people. If it's another person that you have some anger and resentment for, you realize that they want to be happy, that what they did probably was done out of total confusion and ignorance, and that you want them and all beings to be happy. The contemplation in Tonglen and the 7 Points of Mind training is that all beings have been a mother to us in a past life, and that we owe a lot of gratitude for their kindness. And I'm going to go into mothers a little bit, because I had a very difficult mother. She was mentally ill. It was never treated. And on the publicity, where it had all those, explosive anger, these are signs of trauma. All I did is I called up Ani Soltram, and I just described my mother. Yeah, no problem. I've never read a book on trauma. So I had a difficult time with her, needless to say. Oh, I'm supposed to look at all sentient beings like a mother? Where's the AK-47? So this was a difficult thing for me to grab a hold of, and I started working with all beings being my grandmother, who was kind to me. But she was an unusual person too, because she was a mortician. when I was a little boy to visit Grandma, she was working. Her husband had died, so she was working, you know, and there, when you go see Grandmother, there were corpses. And she was a nice grandma, even if she did come with some corpses. You know, again, it shows you your mind. You know, you can look at corpses like, or you can say, oh, well, Grandma was nice. Corpses aren't so bad. But anyway, and I remember, laughter is healing. In fact, Lama, have you thought about hiring a comedian that after your treatment that can go in and have a few laughs?
I think about that all the time.
Anyway, after working with my grandmother and realizing how kind she had been to me and doing Tonglen with her, for those of you who are familiar with Tonglen, then I finally started working on Mom. And where it eventually led to was realizing that she is the one that's responsible for my body, and I really appreciate this body. She was the one that was, and with Dad, responsible for me surviving to adulthood. And that, well, there was a lot of pain and trauma growing up. There was never a scarcity of food or clothing or shelter. When I got to be 16, I got the car keys and could go out and da-da-da-da-da. And there were a lot of things that they did to benefit me, especially Mom. And what I realized that I had received all these gifts, and that allowed me to be mad as hell at her. And that just didn't make sense. And so it was a gradual process, but eventually I was able to understand her as a mother that I could be grateful for, and therefore all beings as a previous mother to be grateful for. So you might have to do some twists and turns to get to that point. The other night we talked about it's fine to see other beings as a child or a grandparent, a sibling, whatever. Anyway, a being that you were close to, that you have a lot of compassion for. But it's really important to realize that even the troublemakers want to be happy, and that we have a connection with them through past lives, and that we want to give them healing, comfort, protection, peace, understanding, and we want to give them space to grow too. We want to give them what we want for ourselves. We have to give up expectations that we can't change. So now I'm going to get into the first part was we give these things. Now we give up those things. We give up the idea that we can't change, that there is something fundamentally wrong with ourselves that can't change. My favorite, I mentioned this to a Lama this morning, my favorite comedy show at the end, it's a man's show, comedy show, but at the end they have a men's group and they have the man's prayer, which is, I'm a man, I can change if I have to, I guess. You have to give up that, even if you're a woman, that we all can change. No matter what we have been through, we can all change. Impermanence. The good things are impermanent, the bad things are impermanent. We have to give up the past. You don't forgive in the past. And the past really doesn't exist other than in our minds. It doesn't exist in the history books either. Yeah, remember, this is not a pipe. For those of you that weren't here yesterday, there's a very famous surrealistic painting of a pipe by Rene Magritte, and it says underneath it, this is not a pipe. The idea is he did this purposely because it's not a pipe, it's a picture of a pipe. And the word pipe is not a pipe. You can't smoke it either. It's not a pipe. And the thought pipe is not a pipe. You can't smoke the thought either. If you could smoke the thought, we wouldn't have to legalize marijuana. So, and I don't recommend that. But anyway, the past is just, it's thoughts. We have to give up punishing ourselves. We have to give up wanting others to suffer because of what they have done in the past. And we have to give up control of the past. Lots of things we have to give up to forgive.
What if you're like waiting for the other person to change before the forgiveness feels like you can actually sink in?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because that's where we all get stuck. And when you do that, you give up your power. You give up your power. The other person, I can't do anything, I'm helpless, until the other person does something.
Yeah. Like I almost feel like I feel like I can't forgive that person until something different comes out. Like if they continue doing the same thing, then
yeah,
it's hard to forgive.
Of course, and it is hard to forgive.
Yeah.
Very hard to forgive. And so this is why the things go on forever, or what seems like forever, is that you're waiting for the other person. And if you think it's hard for you to change, and you want to change, the other person probably doesn't want to change even. So the only way to empower yourself is for you to give up wanting that person to change. Now, forgiveness doesn't mean ignorance. It doesn't mean that you forget that he could harm you in the future. There's a difference. But you don't carry the animosity, the hatred, or the wanting to get even around anymore.
A tool that we were given some time ago that's often helpful is that people that bring difficulty to us are our teachers, that they are providing us with a mirror on ourselves that we're unable to deal with them skillfully. So to regard troublesome people or situations as a teacher, and to have regard for them for offering us the opportunity to work with that particular dynamic can kind of neutralize our reactivity or help us to do so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that goes back to always contemplate whatever causes resentment. And it's excellent. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there are a number of different issues here. One is you are not responsible for solving the world's problems. You know, you have to give up that if I just put more time in, I could stop this from happening. You know, whereas you might be able to stop something from happening right now in the present, but in the future more stuff is going to come, whether it be from the same person or from other people. In your particular instance, you've got animal cruelty that we're talking about specifically, but it happens with social workers too, you know, with a child abuse or whatever. It's out there. I couldn't believe when I started reading the crimes of some of the inmates that I worked with. I just could not believe what goes on out there. But you have to be present. And again, not responsible for the world. You're not responsible for the world. And forgiving an individual does not mean you condone the activity. There's a huge difference. The Karmapa talks about, uses the example of a stick that you're being beaten by. You don't blame the stick. You blame the person that is controlling the stick, that's wielding the stick, that's beating you. And a person that is causing tremendous suffering, or even a little bit of suffering, they're out of control. It's their kleshas, their ego, that is controlling them. And to realize that these people also have Buddha nature, and it's their confusion that's causing them to behave in this way. Does this help? Do you want to ask it again in a little different way now, because I don't feel I've answered your... Yeah, a bodhisattva would be able to behave differently than you would be able to behave. I'm assuming you're not a bodhisattva. I hope I'm not insulting you. Just checking here. And if you were a bodhisattva, you wouldn't be insulted.
Right.
But anyway, you know, it depends on where you are, what level, you know, how you would respond to the particular situation. You know, for a beginner, the beginner would just kind of get away from it. And a bodhisattva, Rinpoche has told stories about bodhisattvas who, even though they had done nothing wrong, the king felt they were totally wrong and chopped them up into pieces, and the bodhisattvas willingly let themselves be chopped up to pieces. So there's your extremes, and so you're going to have to figure out where you are in there. What I always recommend is be mindful, pay attention to how you're feeling, how you're handling things, and try to kind of push the limits of your compassion, patience, and tolerance, rather than I can't deal with this, I don't have any patience, da 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 da. That's giving up too early. Absolutely. Timeouts are excellent. At work, if you have a break, you know, if you're allowed a break every, you know, when I was working 15 minutes every 4 hours, you had a break. And if you would take and do 15 minutes of shamatha, 5 minutes of shamatha, you know, try to put a little bit of shamatha or mindfulness in there. Tonglen is always good. This forgiveness exercise I'm going to teach is going to be Tonglen. And mindfulness, mindfulness, mindfulness.
I know for me, Lama, I'm not in a place where I can actually go and get away from people, but I will frequently go to the bathroom. Especially if like I notice things are heating up, I'll be like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom real quick. And I will just like go sit in the bathroom for a moment because nobody can get you in the bathroom. Like, and you can kind of just be there with yourself.
Yeah, that really is a new way to sit.
It's the only place I found where I cannot be disturbed.
Do you mind if I put that in my book?
Because I know that somebody had said to me, oh, well, you should do shamatha, and there are frequently, I'm in places where I can't.
Right.
Like, people
Yeah.
will come get me, and I've been to Humane Society, there's not like a room that you could go and close the door, but I realized that even if I'm at somebody's like,
Yeah,
you know, housing place, like there's a bathroom somewhere,
yeah.
and I just go into there and close the door.
Yeah. Well, now, Lama Losong, on his cell phone, his ringtone is... Now, the ideal way to use that would be, instead of thinking, I've got to answer the phone, is meditate on the sound before you answer the phone. Just give you that little flash of mindfulness. And I didn't invent this. Again, Thich Nhat Hanh talks about having a flash of mindfulness before you answer the phone. If you can't put that on your cell phone, then just listen to whatever sound it is making before you just grab the phone and jump into it.
Especially if you know who's calling when you see the number. It's one of those where you know it's about to be an emotional ride. Then
Yeah.
Some mindfulness before you answer.
Maybe you might want to answer it in the fourth ring.
Well, you also don't have to answer the phone.
Yeah.
There is voicemail.
That's true.
You can give yourself 10 minutes before you call that
Yeah.
number back.
And I'll raise my hand to that one. I've done that.
I do that.
So, I guess another bit of advice is try new things, innovate. See what works and what doesn't work. Experiment. Life is an experiment. I'm still experimenting. So with mindfulness and trying new things and some of these other things, probably things will change. I can tell you this, that one thing that Rinpoche will do is he frequently will act as a mirror, and that is, don't respond. When somebody is having an emotional upheaval, he's just kind of like a mirror, just and sometimes it bounces right back at the person that's producing it, and they get a message that they didn't expect. Here, this is a very. I think it's an example. It's a little different. But again, this goes back to my prison experience. I get lots of prison stories. Prison as a chaplain. Let's keep this clear here. So one of my students, he knows how to fight. He's been in prison for 15 years. He was on the street by the time he was 16 years old. He knows how to fight. But he's also a good student. And he told me this story recently, and that is that his cellie, that means his cellmate, started beating on him. He had gotten some illegal drugs and been high for a few days, and now he was coming down and was in a really mean mood and started beating him up. And he just went like this. And the guy quit beating him up. It was such an unusual response. Yeah. And this guy could have fought right back. I know he could have fought. And the reason why I know is he started talking about the moves that this guy was making on him. These different moves have names. I'm not a street fighter, so I don't know the names. But anyway, sometimes doing something unexpectedly rather than joining in the game can stop it. And unexpected might be just doing nothing. Might be turning around and walking away. And then, like the rest of life, there's always recovery. You know, when you do blow it, and you go later, you know, that's when to contemplate too. Okay, this is what happened. This is what went wrong. What could I have done differently that would have had a different end? It's always good to do that, which is much more productive than say, oh, there I screw up again. I can't do anything right. Oh, poor me, poor me. But the work situation can be one of the toughest places that we dwell during our lives. I told this story before, but there's some new people here. After getting hired at the prison, within 3 months I had a discussion with the director of security, who was the number 3 man in the prison, and he said, it's not the inmates that are the problem, it's the staff. So yes, if it's the people you work with that are the problem at work, it's normal. It's normal. Darn. So, any other discussion about that before I continue? Okay. I've actually kind of covered what I had next on here, but I'll go over it very quickly. We have to give up control of others and control of the past. We really can't do either one. In fact, we're struggling with trying to control our own emotions. That's why you're here, I assume. And so the path of forgiveness and healing is to understand what's going on in our own minds, to get to know our own emotions, our habitual patterns, our hopes and our fears, see how we are controlled by them, and then apply mindfulness. The Karmapa says in his The Heart is Noble, Changing the World from the Inside Out, that forgiveness is putting a fence between what has happened in the past and the present. Just separating ourselves from what we've done in the past, what others have done in the past, and the present. So we forgive in the present. We can only forgive in the present. What's happened in the past, so there's room to grow in the future. And there are 3 types of forgiveness here that I'm going to go through, and we'll have a little exercise. First is to forgive ourselves from the harm we've caused ourselves. The second is to work with the harm we have caused to other people, people that we would want to forgive us. And the third one is to forgive others who we feel have harmed us. So again, this is good for the workplace. Maybe take a time out at the workplace to do this type of Tonglen that I'm going to teach here. So in terms of ourselves, that it's very easy to magnify harm that we have caused ourselves and blow it way out of proportion. And a lot of things that we get mad at ourselves for and beat ourselves up for really have nothing to do with virtue and non-virtue. It's very ego involved. We said something or did something that made us look dumb. You know, it would be like me spilling this cup of tea, as Thich Nhat Hanh did, and then saying, I'm a Lama, I'm not supposed to do this. And then the rest of the day or on the plane home tomorrow going, boy, did I make a fool of myself. What must have all of you been thinking? Yada, 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 yada. We all do this sort of thing. It's not non-virtuous to make a mistake. You don't even have to forgive those things. This is just bruising your little delicate ego. It's good to bruise ego. But on these things of virtue and non-virtue, and if you can't let go of when you're bruising your ego, then forgive that too. It's about loving ourselves, having compassion for ourselves, being a loving mother to ourselves. In my case, it was a loving grandmother, as I said. This kind of love is unconditional. It doesn't matter what you have done, no matter how bad it is. But it's just that you are worthy of experiencing some happiness. You are worthy of experiencing some freedom from suffering, that you don't have to cause your own suffering. One of the definitions of forgiveness, I talked about give, but a definition of forgiveness is used in the banking industry. And that is that you take out a loan and then the bank says, oh, I forgive you. I forgive the loan. You don't have to pay it back. You know, we all want that call. Don't hold your breath. But you can look at forgiveness that way too. You have done something and you're angry at yourself, you feel resentful and so forth. And now you're going to say, okay, I'm going to forgive that loan. I don't have to pay it back by beating myself anymore and causing more suffering to myself. I'm even going to forgive the interest. So think about it that way. And so now, actually, I'm glad the bowl is here, because what we're going to do is a very short Tonglen exercise. And this is how it's going to work. Visualize yourself in front of you. And this is you in the future. Let's go 10 minutes in the future. So when we're done with this exercise, you will have caught up with this future you. And you're in your own form. And when you are inhaling, what you are doing, you are taking all these things that you have done that you are holding against yourself. All the times you've screwed up, all the things that you're angry about, that you're embarrassed about, that you feel resentful about yourself, the bad things that you have done. You maybe don't have time to think about all of them. Just work with the worst ones. And it comes in the form of black, thick, hot smoke. And when you exhale, then what you are exhaling in the form of white, cool light is healing and forgiveness. You're giving love to that future you. You are giving acceptance. Yes, I have done these things, but I can let go of that. You are still all right. You're giving them happiness. You're giving this future you peace and contentment. So we'll do a little shamatha here first. Just sit still if you don't know how to do shamatha. And then after a few minutes, we'll start the exercise. Visualize yourself in front of you, a future you, about 10 minutes not into the future. And as you inhale, breathe coming from that person, this black smoke that comes into your, through your mouth and your nose and then dissolves into nothingness. And it carries with it the suffering and the things that you've done in the past that you need to forgive, whatever that may be. And when you exhale this cool white light that goes into and dissolves into the person, you in the future, and carries with it healing and acceptance, peace, happiness, contentment. Okay. Anyone have any comments or questions about that? Yes?
At the beginning, it felt really good, and then it got like overwhelming and I became exhausted. Like right in the middle, I was just like, I need to go take a nap now. It didn't feel good anymore. And like the white light became gray, and I couldn't get it to be white again.
Yeah. Well, try it for short periods of time. Yeah, try it for short periods of time. Well, this is something that you can, I'll comment on this and I'll go on. This is something that you could do occasionally or even regularly, especially if you find that you're getting hard on yourself. And so the more you do it, the more proficient you'll get at. You know, like everything else in life. The first time, you don't do as well as the second time usually. And so that's my comment on what you had to say. Anything else? So put yourself back out in front again and do it. Have you had any empowerments? Okay, then have yourself in front and then you do it. And keep doing it until you get proficient. It's an obstacle, but it's something. So just keep trying and generally it gets easier and improves. Other questions or comments? Yeah, and this is how you learn about yourself a little more. And you don't have to take that voice seriously. You don't have to take that voice seriously. I went into this quite a bit yesterday. But yeah, it's subconscious gossip. And it's just an opinion. Sometimes it's called monkey mind, but there's a phrase that has come into use recently in this country. It's called the spin doctor. And you could look at it as a spin doctor. You know, it's taking perhaps the truth, but it's putting a very bizarre spin on it. And so, yeah, just realize that this isn't an accurate voice. With my mother, I learned very quickly that when she said something happened, unless somebody else would tell me it happened, I felt it probably didn't happen. Like I said, she was mentally ill. Well, that voice inside of you is kind of mentally ill too. It's a neurotic voice. Remember, slightly out of touch with reality. Mm-hmm. I talked about neurosis yesterday, and that's the end of the definition, is slightly out of touch with reality. But you don't have to get down on it, you just ignore it. You just realize, okay, I just don't have to listen to you. You can talk all you want, but I'm not listening. Yeah, ego is thinking that you are the most important person in the room. And so you think that you're excelling and making mistakes. You make more mistakes than anybody in the room, right? You probably, I'm not going to do a survey here, but you probably make about the same number of mistakes as everybody else. But you're just emphasizing that, and you think that's your specialty.
Okay, so when I say something and the person reacts in a negative way, it's not because it was me, it's because maybe the person has their own business in mind, their own world, and maybe I didn't do anything wrong. It's the person who perceived my...
Absolutely. Yeah, sometimes we do things that are actually wrong. We do make mistakes. We do engage in non-virtuous actions and so forth. But again, how a person responds to that is going to be based on their own habitual patterns. And of course, we do not want to do things that upset other people. We do not want to do things that actually causes harm to other people, and so forth. But this kind of leads into the next type of forgiveness, so I'm going to go into that. And that is the people that we have harmed or think we have harmed them. There are a lot of people out there that think we have harmed them, and we really haven't harmed them. Maybe we've embarrassed them. Maybe we've stepped on their ego, and so forth. And so here is how this exercise works. So these people that we have harmed, now it has probably been done, as I talked about before, because of our confusion and us being controlled by our negative emotions. That's why we do negative things. And so what we want to do is we want to, instead of giving them harm this time, we want to give them love and compassion. And so this is a very simple exercise. You visualize that person in front of you that you want to forgive you. And think about what it is that you did to harm them, or that they think you did to harm them.
Can you talk about that just a little bit more, the idea of thinking that we harmed them, and like if we didn't actually harm them, like how that.
Yeah, well, this is the person that's angry at you because they feel you've harmed them in some way or another. You know, they have anger and resentment. You don't have to go very far beyond the workplace to find someone like that. They usually, they're in every workplace. Sometimes we're the one at the workplace that's in that role. And so you can probably think of a time when you did something that upset this person. And they might even be more than happy to remind you of this time. That's what I'm talking about. And so with this exercise, you want to take, an obvious example. You don't want to be subtle here. You want to take an obvious example of a person that you would like to forgive you, to quit ragging on you and how you hurt them. So I think everybody can think of something like that. I've never had a prisoner ask me, "What do you mean by that?"
I think it's just like, what is our role in that? Because there are plenty of people who think that I've done something wrong to them, but I haven't.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a hard time. I'm kind of indifferent about that.
Yes.
So.
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, let's start out with people that you actually feel you've harmed. I'm assuming you can think of someone.
Oh yes.
Yeah, let's work with the easy ones first. But it is good to remember that there are people that we have not at least knowingly harmed, but they feel we have harmed them. There's some people literally that just, for whatever reason, even before they met us, they seem to be mad at us. And again, you know what I'm talking about. I see two big smiles here. I had a dog that would smile at anybody who drove up. I called him my Walmart greeter. He would never bark. Car drive up, he'd go to the driver's side, wag his tail, and one time a car drove up there and there was a 12-year-old boy and he started snarling and growling at that boy. That's what I'm talking about. You've met that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I assumed it was karma, from some past life because he'd never seen this boy before, but I just couldn't believe it. This was a black lab that loves kids, loves people, smiles at everybody. But yeah, that happens. But in this case, let's start with the cases where it's obvious to us that we have done something. And so, you'll visualize them in front of you. Think about what you have done that they feel has harmed them. And so when you're breathing in, you breathe in that harm you caused them. Again, it's going to be carried by the black hot smoke. Do we need Kleenex to be passed around, by the way? And then when you breathe out peace, healing from the anger and the resentment. Give them your happiness. Not happiness, your happiness. This is getting personal here. You're taking their pain and you're giving them your happiness, your peace, your contentment. This is not a forgiving of a loan. This is you're paying back the loan. So let's do that for a few minutes here. Now we'll do this exercise. So again, visualize a person that you would like to have forgive you in front of you. And when you inhale, breathe in from them, coming from them, whatever it is that you have done that harmed them, that hurt them, that caused them pain. And then exhale your happiness, your contentment, any pleasure that you have in exchange. Okay, any comments about that practice? Seems like that was easier for people. No one has anything to say. Well, then I'm going to go on, because we are running out of time for this morning's session, into the third, and that is the troublemakers in life. And I'm sure that, again, there won't be any problem finding someone in your own life. Hopefully you don't have to look next door this morning for that troublemaker. But, because I saw you two looking at each other. As has been brought up, that one of the teachings is to see the troublemaker as a teacher, teach us patience. It's interesting that when you do this exercise on the people you want to forgive you, at least when I think about it, I find that frequently that person that I've hurt, I consider an enemy, and that's why I'm hurting them, that they've hurt me, and so I'm hurting back. And though there could be some overlap in these two groups, if you've done set theory, we won't go into that, but you know, the people that you consider an enemy, usually we're not innocent bystanders, that they have hurt us and we want to reach out or lash out in our own pain and get back. And sometimes we initiate it first. We were the one that began the battle. So all of this is good to be aware of. It's really important to realize that we are willing participants in samsara. It's also important to remember that if we cannot forgive ourselves, we cannot forgive other people. If we don't know how to forgive ourselves, we really cannot forgive other people. And so this is why I started with ourselves. That's where it begins. Now, of course, the source of the problem with other people, our enemies, people that have harmed us, is that we're angry at them. And so it's good to think a little bit about the defects of anger. And it is that if you are angry at somebody else, you are constantly carrying that around with you. And by the way, if you're angry at yourself, you're constantly carrying that around with you. You can't get away from anger. And when you're angry at another person, you are not expressing it to them nearly as often as you're expressing it to yourself. They might not even know you're angry at them. And then they call them trolls on the internet, but there are people out there that want you to be angry at them. They're happy when you're angry at them. So a lot of parts about anger just don't make any sense at all. When you're angry at somebody else, you are hurting yourself. You're poisoning your own mind. You're blocking your ability to be happy. to be peaceful, to be content. It doesn't come from Buddhism, but might be this 12 steps, which is that anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And it's truly like that. It eats away at you little by little by little. And so we have to realize that it's really important for our own benefit to be able to forgive. And as was brought up, we cannot depend on the other person making the first step, because that leaves you in a helpless position. And nobody likes to be helpless. It's an easy position because then you don't have to do anything. It's a really easy position, a lazy position, but it leaves you helpless and powerless. And by enabling yourself to do this, to empower yourself, I like empower better than enable. In the 12 steps program, enable is a bad word. To empower yourself to do this, it gives you a feeling of I can do this, of dignity, and removes this idea of helplessness. So we try to generate compassion for this person that is an enemy of ours, and thinking of them as a lost mother or a son or a grandparent or whatever it takes to help generate a little bit of warmth towards that person. Then visualize them in front of you and do the same exchange where you are inhaling their anger, their pain. Because you have to remember, they are engaged in the behavior that's causing you pain because they're in pain. They're not doing this out of the fact that they are having a wonderful, beautiful day. Going back to a dog, a pet, a family pet, a dog that is seriously injured and in a lot of pain, if you are going to help that animal, you have to put a muzzle on them or they're going to bite you. And so when you're going through your daily life and people are biting you, it's a sign that they are in a lot of pain. And it really helps to realize this, that there's just a huge amount of pain out there and people are experiencing a huge amount of pain. And this too can help generate compassion for them. Again, you might have to do the equivalent of putting a muzzle on them before you get close. You know, you have to realize that you were talking about protecting yourself. You have to be mindful of what happens when you do certain things and the results, and do what you can to avoid getting sucked in. Another example of that is a drowning person. They get in a state of panic. And I like this analogy because the analogy is that we're all drowning in an ocean of suffering. The ocean of suffering being samsara. Well, if you would swim out there to save that person, if you would approach them directly, they will grab a hold of you and try to get on top of you, pull you down, and drown you. And then they'll drown. So it requires skillful means. You have to develop the ability to, if you were actually going to rescue a drowning person, you dive down and then come up behind them and grab them from behind. So this is an analogy. I'm not saying do this in the office. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, and not like this. I knew you didn't want to say that. No, skillful means. But here we visualize that troublemaker in front of us. And we inhale their pain, their suffering, their anger, whatever it is. This is hard. And that's why you start with yourself. So you can start feeling better about yourself. And then give back, again, happiness, peace, contentment. And if you think about it, you want them to be happy and peaceful and content. They'll behave much better. So, it's a win-win situation here that we're talking about. So we'll meditate very briefly. So now we'll begin the actual practice of visualize that troublemaker or your enemy in front of you. And then inhale their anger, their pain, whatever it is that is causing them to be in such a state of panic. And then exhale, which dissolves into them, then peace and contentment and joy, your happiness, whatever it is that you have, that you could give to them that would make them happy and suffer less. Okay, any final comments before we break for lunch? You're all hungry, you just want to go eat lunch. So why don't we end here and then come back, do more meditation, and then can continue.